All right. And Adriana is here to start. I was like, I think a lot of people were busy during our live show time today, but I said I think Adriana's coming even though she had the wrong time to start. But yay. Hi. We
Hello.
are here for the Shelf This Book Club for the month of April.
Girl. Yes.
And Natalie from
Hello.
That's Bookish Cafe picked our book this month. If you don't know her, she is linked down below. I think I remembered to do that this time. And yeah, I love Natalie's channel. This is her first time picking.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to now have you in rotation because I feel like we've become pretty good friends over the last couple of years since you joined BookTube. You were on Instagram first, right?
Yeah, I tried to do Bookstagram a little bit, and I kind of fell away from that because I'm just not a photography girly, and I just feel like
But I
this works
think
a lot better for me.
yeah, I think I found you because I think Amy from A Star Reads shared your channel when you came to BookTube, and that's how I found you. So I think I've been watching you like basically from the beginning. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to have you here for book club.
Thanks.
And you picked a good pick, an interesting pick. We're talking about The Spirit Bears Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White today.
Yep.
And yeah, I feel like this was something every time I tried to describe the book, talking about that it was going to be a book club pick, I was having a tough time. I do think I described it okay as
Yeah.
just like a keywords situation. Do you want to try to pitch this right now, or do you want me to?
I mean, I've kind of been describing this as like a YA historical horror with some paranormal aspects to it.
Which is
Um,
true.
yeah, I was like, that's kind of like the mix of
What it is.
genres that are going on
Also, I feel like
here.
it's all like keyword because to say anything, I mean, you can say a little bit about the plot. Um,
Right.
like basically, we have a trans main character who gets sent to a boarding school of sorts. Um, and it's a boarding school settings, a scary, spooky one, a bad one, not good, not good vibes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely, I mean, there was like a couple of reasons I chose this book. One, I mean, I've read from this author before and I've enjoyed their writing, and
I
I
saw
really
that you
wanted,
said that. I didn't realize that when you picked this, but
yeah,
I'll
I
say
read
more
their
later.
Hell Followed With Us, their debut novel last year, and it was really good. So I was like, I don't want to pick a book where I'm like, at least now I'm kind of certain that they know how to write. And so hopefully people will enjoy it. And, you know, I wanted to make sure that I picked something that was relatively diverse because I try to read
Yeah.
relatively diversely on my channel. And then I just felt like the topic, while in a historical setting, is really relevant to nowadays with all the abortion issues, with the forced
Yes.
pregnancy in here, and all the trans laws that are against trans people today. So I was just like, I feel like
Yes.
we could have some good discussions
This
about
was
this.
yes, I definitely appreciate a diverse pick to bring that to book club. Sometimes, I let people choose whatever they want, and so it's hard to like say I'm a stats girl, so it's hard to be like, keep everything a certain percentage of diversity or a certain percentage this genre or this age group. But I do
Right.
appreciate anytime somebody comes and prioritizes diversity for the book club. So it was
Yeah.
it was a welcome book here.
Yeah.
Okay. I think before we talk about there's a lot I feel like I have to say, and I know you've watched these book club discussions, maybe. I'm just really rambly and all over the place. I'm not very linear. So I want to know what everybody rated the book because I don't know. I don't think what anybody here rated it. So do you want me to say first or do you want to say first?
I'll let you go first.
Okay.
I'm scared.
You're scared? Actually, book club had a really bad like streak for me when I first started book club of ratings, but lately it's been going much better.
Okay.
Uh I ended up through Cawpile rating this 4.5. And so, but when I finished, I originally did get like a little bit of like, this is like probably gonna barely scrape 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say that like 4.5's my half stars. I always round down, but I
Mm-hmm.
do think I might actually give this 5 stars on Goodreads just because I do think that I would like to promote the diversity of this. And also, I think just anything that is so outside of my comfort zone, this was like nothing I would usually grab for me to enjoy it that much. I think even though I know it's 4.5, I probably will do the 5 on Goodreads.
Nice. Yeah. I'm happy to hear that. I was a little bit worried because
I mean, I am a 2-star girly. I give a lot of 2 stars.
But I gave it 5 stars as well. Yeah, so I was really happy. I know I gave the author's first book 4.5 stars. So I was like, I definitely think I'm gonna give it like a high rating, and knowing that I like this one better was really exciting. So I was like, yes, 5-star read.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fun going into this discussion, but we may not have much debate here. Adriana gave it 3. Horror's not my thing. Horror's not really my thing either, but I did like it. This must be Rena. I think this is her boyfriend's name. Don't forget the main character is also autistic. Yes. And I actually thought that was very well done too. Like, even when they mentioned like certain things, that it was like subtle. Like, it wasn't like some books I've read with autistic main characters, or just like anybody with mental illness, it's like drilled in your face. And I thought that this was there where it was like you could tell it was affecting his whole life, but then there would just be like little lines about like him trying not to sway, or like, I've trained this out of me type of conversation. And I thought it was good. It was a 5 for me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It resonated so much.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah. A good one. Okay. What do I want to talk about first? Firstly, I do want to talk about, at the beginning of this book, there is a big like warning page, basically saying like that it's been a minute since I read it, but basically saying that this is like a harsh book, and like, while some of these are like things that happen are historically accurate in terms of stuff that happened to trans people and people with autism and things like that, while some of the horrors are true, you don't have to endure them through reading this. And yeah, I really like that was included, because this book did go pretty nasty into something. So I always like when stuff like that is included. I think more and more authors are doing it these days, giving like content warnings or warnings in general before books. But I think, like, especially for a horror, I appreciated it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes with trigger warnings, they can definitely be seen as a little bit spoilery, but especially as someone who's newish to horror and is, a bit sensitive to it, I just like knowing what to expect. So, I mean, it's still hard to read, but at least it doesn't like jump out at you and catch you off guard or anything. So I really did like that author note. I thought it was really well written.
I don't know what my family's doing downstairs, and I'm sorry if you can hear them.
I can't. I mean, it's like pouring rain right now, so I hope.
Like, what's going on? What else did I want to say? My mind always goes blank. There's literally something I was just gonna say. Oh well, to move on. That my biggest, like, anytime someone's like, what content warnings do you have? Like, what trigger warnings do you have? I'm usually like, oh, nothing except stuff that has to do with like cuts. And so this, like, for me was like the only thing that really gives me like the heebie-jeebies, and there was a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because to me, the horror in this is like the surgical. It's basically like a huge surgical. Is that the right way to describe the horror?
Yeah, I mean, the body horror in here was pretty intense. I mean, when they talked about like dissecting the girls and then knowing that they were doing it while they were alive, you just kind of like, without any sort of pain management, was probably one of the biggest horror aspects of it, for sure. I was like, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely thought that. I mean, I can do okay with body horror sometimes. Sometimes I'm a little sensitive to it, especially like the way that he described it. I kind of remember when Silas was cutting that guy's neck and it was talking about like the muscle popping and like shifting. And I was like, "Ugh."
It is all like to me, all the horror that I can recall. Like it's obviously like a spooky setting, just with the school being like a negative place, but like to me the true horror was all right, like that body stuff and talking about getting through things and getting to things and removing things and
Right.
sewing them back up and everything. So
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was well done because I think, you know, the purpose is to give you the ick and the heebie jeebies, so it was working on me.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I really liked it. I feel like so much lately when I've been reading kind of horror stories, one of my complaints about them is that when I'm reading them, I don't feel uncomfortable. I don't feel paranoid. I don't feel fear for the character. And I felt very disturbed throughout this entire
I
story.
agree.
So it's
And
like,
like I really wanted to know, like at the end, I mean, you assume that something is going to end really bad or like there's going to be a good, they're in a better place situation, you know. You can go either way, but
right.
like I did definitely have that drive to like figure out what was going to happen at the end. Did you have anything that stood out as to like your biggest negative of this? Because one thing comes to mind for me.
Mm,
Because I want to talk about the characters next.
mm-hmm.
And I do think that I do think there was a little left to be desired with the girls at the school. I didn't feel like we had much connection there.
Right. Yeah, and I know in the Discord, Lon mentioned that a couple times. And towards the end of the book, it definitely is brought
Yeah.
up where Silas is like, oh, I feel like I still don't know
Yeah.
these girls that much or anything like that. And whether that is on purpose because of Silas's autism, that they just
Yeah.
never have had the ability
That's
to
true.
connect with people. And so that's normal for them. I mean, I feel like the author, in a way, did it on purpose, but as someone who is character driven, I think I would have
Yeah.
appreciated it a little more, for
Yeah.
sure.
I just think in a lot of other like a boarding school settings, I think generally I see that used for the plot as like really like forcing a found family type situation.
Mhm.
And I didn't get that vibe from this.
Right.
But I do think even towards the end of the plot, when more is happening to the girls, we got a lot more there. But through a lot of the middle, it was like, okay, he gets there. And then you know that these girls exist, but there's not like that much.
Right.
I definitely
Yeah.
felt for them when stuff was happening, bad stuff was happening to them.
I mean, I think he definitely could have focused a little bit more on Isabella, and that could have made that scene where Silas found her just that much more impactful
Yeah.
because it definitely felt like she was the one that Silas connected to the most. And
Yeah.
I wish we had dived into
I
that
mean,
a
a
little
lot
bit
was said in terms of, right, like 2 days ago, she was hugging me, and then a day ago, and then now she's like laying on this table, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt that in those moments, but it wasn't, like I said, like a true feeling of found family or like too deep, which I also always say I appreciate the length. Like this wasn't too long. So it's like all these things that are left to be desired. You realize that if they were included, this would be a 500-page book. And
Right.
then I would complain that it's too long. So,
Right.
you know, it is
Yeah.
what it
I
is.
will say I really enjoyed the character development of Mary because I did not like Mary in the beginning at all, but in the end I had like a ton of respect for her and was really glad that she survived.
Well, yeah, and then we get that like the year later is with her. And I
Right.
I in that part felt really like right, happy that there was somebody that they were going to see and stay connected to, and right in the end that's who is there.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that she was compared to like a wolf all the time. Like most of the time, I felt like it really worked for her because she would be backed into these corners like a injured animal and she would lash out and she would be violent. But then when she kind of took Daphne and Silas as her pack,
Hmm.
then she kind of started fighting for them and was always there for them and put her life on the line essentially
Hmm.
for them. And I did like the ending a lot. There was a part of me that was almost like, oh, I wish there would be a sequel because that is where you get to the all right, we have a group of queer people,
Yeah.
disabled people, women coming together who are going to take down this powerful system. And I'm like, I want
That
to see that.
I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I don't think that in like where you would take the plot that you could keep the horror as much. I don't know. I think it'd be hard
Yeah.
to pull in to a sequel.
Definitely. I mean, they said there's other schools like that,
True.
and then you can definitely see they were trying to force it onto other countries and stuff. So, I mean, you could definitely broaden it, but it might not feel the same.
I just recently watched like a documentary series about um like boarding schools for troubled girls that like really reminded me of this. I don't know where I watched it on, probably either Netflix or Hulu, but it was about right like basically they got sent away and the school told their parents that they were taking care of them, but really it was like a prison, you know.
Right.
And so I think I was pulling a lot of that information too to be like this is real. Like this stuff, maybe not the like paranormal stuff, but like people are put through bad things because of differences or troubles, and it's just crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
I want to talk about like the overarching arcing plot of I feel like the character that is pulled through most of this, which is his brother George. And I think in the beginning, at least, I was really like, yes, George, they have somebody. Were you feeling the same at the beginning?
I really was. I was so disappointed in Georgia's descent into, let's call it madness. I'm just gonna
Were you expecting that George was going to become a villain?
I I was hoping that he would be more like an inside ally, but
Right.
as soon as he was, like, at that initial meeting, I was kind of like,
Okay, because I
"He's
felt
kinda weak."
really, I felt really naive, and it was like 2 pages before we find out that it's George in the basement,
Oh,
where they were like, "There's 3 men coming down the stairs." That is the first moment where I was like, "That's gonna be George." Like, what did you instantly clock that?
I mean, I definitely figured it was him because Silas seemed to recognize the voices when
Yes.
he and Daphne were, like, hearing the doctors go
Oh,
there the first
you
time.
thought that he recognized that as George then?
I don't
I
think
missed that.
he recognized it, but he was like, "I know these people, but I just don't know who it is." And I was like,
But to me, like, your brother is so obvious. If I heard my sister's voice, I wouldn't be like, "That sounds familiar." I'd be like, "That's Erica." You know?
right. Yeah, I
Like,
mean, they said they were wearing medical masks, and I don't know how
okay,
much that
yeah,
distorts
yeah.
voices.
But then I just felt
But
silly too because, like, little naive me believes when George is like, "No, I've never been to the school." And then you found out later that, like, he's pulling a fast one on you.
I feel like I lost all hope of him when he turned against his wife and said that it was her fault for
Oh,
having the miscarriage, and I was like, "Oh, he's a goner."
yeah.
Yeah, no.
To me, this was just like, your brother is too familiar. Like, to me, it
Right.
would have to be like just somebody you barely knew to be like, that seems familiar, but I'm not quite sure.
But I
But
just don't know how much
I get it
denial how
now.
strong can denial be for you to be like, "No,
Right.
I
Right.
must be imagining things."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was disappointing. And, yeah, I know some people were upset that he didn't die in the end, but, I mean, the way the story ended, what was her name? the young bride, she was like, do you want him to die? And that kind of made it seem like if they create this group to take down the, what is it called, the Royal Speakers Society, that George is number one on their list.
Yeah.
So he might be a goner.
Oh no. I mean, yeah, there is like stuff left to be desired. What you said about like that would be valued in a sequel. But I don't know. I like when things are just their own contained thing, and I don't need everything to be. I think like the plot of this was wrapped up to be one book, and I don't need everything to be
right,
perfect or known. Life goes on in all books we read. Life goes on, and you never know. You get to the happily ever after, and maybe they get divorced in 10 years. Like you never know. So
that's true. Yeah. No, perfectly fine as a standalone. I think the author did a pretty good job, and sometimes it's nice to just be able to continue the story on your own, in your own head.
And I will say that this definitely left me intrigued enough to read more of his books. So he got me the same way as he would if he was going to write a sequel. So
yeah,
I mean, at the end, maybe I'll have you tell me what his other book is about, because I haven't read the synopsis at all. So I don't know if I want to go back to that or like just look forward to what's coming next. Daphne?
I love her.
I know. I loved it so much. Especially when like at first Silas is like, I'm gonna have to marry this man. And then we find out what we find out, and I'm like, please let this work out. I thought the whole book that like something bad was going to happen to Daphne.
Oh, I was scared.
So I'm very happy with how that turned out. And it was just like every time Daphne showed up, I was like, it was like your little bit of hope and something's good, and like her and her family had power. And then the dad, like, ick.
Grody guy.
But then again, like, I like what happened there. Like, nice try, bud.
Yeah. There's something so creepy about old men going after young girls and being like, you remind me of my wife.
Yeah, icky. Right.
Goodbye.
And she was 30 years ago. Right.
Yeah.
Do we think that, I'm trying to think of the last name. It's like Luckinbill. Is that right? Lord Luckinbill?
Right.
It's similar to that. Did he know that Daphne was trans?
He definitely didn't respect his son or, you know, his son, and didn't see him as manly. I don't think he knew that they were
like not like, was everybody around Silas and Daphne forcing this into this thing unknowingly? I think yes. And then I think it's also like good that they found each other.
Yeah.
They were both like, because for Silas, his parents were like, you need to get married. And he was like, no, like, that's not what I want at all. But then to like find the solace in Daphne. I just liked all of that with them.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely felt like Daphne that her father was using her to get close to Silas. Like, I don't know if her father was like, yeah, there's a part of me that knows that me wanting to marry the 17-year-old is grody, and
You think he always wanted to marry?
I mean, he was pretty obsessed with Silas from like the beginning. He was like, oh, I'm going to pay off the police and I'll pay for you to go to the school. And I told them not to touch you at all. And so I think he wanted Silas from the beginning.
Yeah. Ew.
Yeah. Ew, indeed. I'm trying.
I know that Rena had a lot of quotes she really liked, which if anybody wants to go back and go through our Discord conversations, Rena shared a lot of her favorite quotes there. I unfortunately did not come into this prepared to like tab or anything, so I can't say anything off the top of my head. But this writing, I am not a writing girly. I usually like really straightforward, blunt, this happened, this happened, this happened,
Yeah.
plot. But I really, really liked the writing in this. And there definitely is a lot of quotable things. I would reread this to annotate, or
Yeah.
at least like read the ebook version to.
Yeah.
I need to admit to myself that like Kindles are the way to go because it's so easy to just like
I
highlight and then it
know.
saves it forever. Like you can go on Goodreads and click your highlights. What an amazing world we live in. But yeah, this is definitely I would love to reread this.
Yeah, I definitely had some good lines in it. I didn't annotate it either, but I always feel like my annotations ruin the book, so I never want to,
Oh,
which
I'm
is why
not
my Kindles are
I
probably
used to be
better.
worse about that. I was worried. I always am nervous because this was something so outside of my comfort zone too that I went and purchased it. And I'm
Mhm.
like, so it was like meant to be that I would love it then because now it gets to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, definitely.
What's so funny is I read this in February or March and used this book club to reread and annotate. We'll get there eventually. Next year should be a big rereading year for me as long as I actually get through Jokes on Me and my physical TBR. The goal is to be like the book club and readathon girly and then also like do a lot of my rereads that I've been putting off.
Yeah. I have not been doing very good with rereads. I think I've only reread one book this year, and I'm always trying to reread at least 6. So I'm like, I'm a little
I
behind.
was just looking at my spreadsheet. I still have it up. I've reread 11 books this year. But I've been reading with Lizzie and Danielle for their throwback book club. So I reread the first 2 Hunger Games. I reread Beautiful Creatures. I'm rereading something right now. Oh, I reread through all the Heartstoppers to read volume 5.
Oh,
So that's like most of them there. But yeah,
nice.
they stacked up. Do you have any other points, things you wanted to make sure we touched on about this book?
I mean, one thing I like about that Andrew did in his other book as well when it came to the trans experience is that our trans characters one really know that there's nothing wrong with them. Even Silas, when people are like, oh, it's a veil sickness, they're like, no, I know straight up that's not it.
Like, this
And
is how I am.
right.
He almost thinks of it as like it was a mistake that I ended up this way. Like it's not a mistake that I am a man, it's a mistake that I came out and the word I'm trying to think of is anatomically. Is that the right word?
Oh,
A girl.
right.
Like they are so sure that like no, I am a man and that's what it is.
Yeah, they're like, yep, I'm Silas, always have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of liked, and I think this was one of the quotes that you, Raina, was that her name?
Rena?
Quoted where it was like, I just think some boys, it takes them longer to realize.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there was that one. And then another thing
So
Andrew
many.
does, and he did this in his other book too, is where while Silas wanted a hysterectomy, this was just because they did not want to be forced to be pregnant. Otherwise, they were happy and comfortable in their body. It was the way that other people perceived them that was the issue. And I like that Andrew really focuses on that when it comes
There's a
to trans.
conversation later on about because when they talk about pregnancy at first, they do talk about, their organs getting shoved where they shouldn't be. But there's a conversation later about him just being like, I don't want to be viewed as a mother.
Right.
Which I really thought that whole Silas thinks it in his head first, but then he does talk to Daphne about it later too. And I thought that was an interesting discussion to be presented here. Also, I could not wrap my head around that this was YA.
There were definitely a few times where I was just like, at least new adult.
That's what like, I wanted to shelve it as new adult, but I couldn't remember what they say their ages are in the beginning. Because at the end, it says they, like, pretended to be, like, 22 or something,
Pretty
and
sure
then
Silas
Mary
was
says something that's
17.
like, "You're barely 20," and I'm like, "How old?" I'm sure it was said in the beginning, and it's the beginning when you're just trying to, like, get your footing, but I don't exactly remember.
Yeah. Because I mean, I thought they said the legal age of marriage was like 2021, and our character definitely wasn't that. I want to say Silas was 17. I just keep remembering that that young girl, I want to say her name was like Agnes or something, was like 14 and pregnant. And I was just like, oh,
There's a show for that now.
there's a show for that. Yeah.
16 is a perfect age for a girl as pretty as you. So they must be 16 at the beginning. It says, "It's time," Mother said, taking my hand and squeezing, putting too much pressure on the metacarpals, the proximal flanges. 16 is the perfect age for a girl as pretty as you.
Yeah.
When they're talking about finding a suitor.
I just thought it was interesting. Like, if we think of like Victorian England, we're like, oh, they're so behind our social advancements. But then the fact that we are following someone who's stuck in a society that is even further behind Victorian England
Oh,
with
yeah.
like their bride prizes or prices and all that stuff.
You also read A Lady for a Duke, right? I think that's a good recommendation to people if they like this. Not horror, but it's a historical romance with a trans main character. I really like that one. I don't think you liked it as much as I did, but I really like that one.
I think I gave it 4 stars because it
Okay.
was too long.
I mean, it is. Yeah, it's a little funky.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, while I was reading this, I was listening to the audiobook of Most Ardently by Gabe Cole Nova, which is a queer retelling of Pride and Prejudice with a trans main character.
Oh.
So the whole time I was reading this, I was like comparing it to that book as well, because that queer character, Elizabeth, known as Oliver, who's actually Oliver, had like this big support system and everything. And I was like, I wish our character had that.
Right.
I feel like they're so alone right now. So yeah, no. If you haven't read Most Ardently by Gabe Cole Nova, who is a Hispanic trans character author, definitely check it out.
I'm looking it up right now.
I gave that one 4.5 stars, so I was very happy.
Ooh. I don't know Pride and Prejudice. Would it still make sense?
I never have read Pride and Prejudice.
So I love that Silas explained maleness has different levels because the logical opposite of that is femaleness has different levels, and I love that for those sexes. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. I thought it was so interesting that the headmaster was like, no, this is specifically what a man is. And that whole school is dedicated to this is specifically what a woman is. And I'm like, y'all putting yourself in these like tiny little boxes.
I mean, it is like historically accurate though that they use like everything was such like this is a man's role, this is a women's role, and we've come so far in that even. But yeah, obviously everything is a spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like it was interesting in the author's note where he said things that have happened in history are scarier than anything that's happened in a horror novel. And just like thinking about these things that actually happened, you're like, yeah, that's kind of scary. Would not want to live through that, you know?
That just made me think of how they talk about how there's no servants because they just make the girls do it. And they talked a lot about like servants, entrances and stuff. And it's like, oh my gosh, like that was just so normal.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have any more thoughts if you don't. I would like.
I don't think so.
No? Yeah. Good discussion. I'm glad. I think we liked it. There's I don't know if you know this. There is a spreadsheet linked in the like general chat of the book club where you can enter your ratings and it'll give like people's enjoyment of the book. So green is good, down to red is like nobody in the book club liked it. And all the previous books are listed there too if you've read any of them and want to enter a rating there. That exists. Thanks to Lizzie. It's my favorite thing to do after I read the book club books. But next month, we are reading Writers and Lovers by Lily King. This was picked by Kayla. And a little fun, funky, fresh time is that Kayla's actually going to be here. When is she here? It's a weird weekday night, but I think that we're going to try to talk about it while she's here. Because why shouldn't we? So she's flying here and then we're flying elsewhere. So she's here with me for one single day on May 29th. It's a Wednesday. So we've been throwing around discussing it while she's here. Okay. Not set in stone, but it could happen. And this is about, it's like a coming of age story for like a 30-something-year-old woman who is still hoping that she can aspire to have a creative career, to live creatively in her early 30s, and like coming to terms with if that's gonna work for her or not. I think there's also like a little love triangle, like she falls in love with two men, and it's like a little midlife crisis-y is the vibe I get from this. So I'm excited to read this one. I don't think I've hauled this yet. I did buy it. And yeah, and then we'll have a break. Is that the other one?
So this is their debut. So it's called Hell Followed With Us. And once again, we have a trans main character. Once again, it is horror and there is body horror.
Okay.
And this is kind of post-apocalyptic cults.
Ooh, maybe I will have to go back and do that one. So, I probably will.
Pretty good. Yeah, lots of religious trauma. So
the cover of that, not as much this, like these two covers obviously go together, but the cover of that reminds me of the School of Good and Evil books. I don't know if it's just like the crossing ribbons. I don't know.
Oh, I think I might know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the cover reminds me. Also, I think one of them is maybe that color. Yeah, I probably will need to read that. Do they have anything, Andrew?
I don't know what their next release this year is.
Anything? Yeah, there's a third book listed here. Expected 2024, Compound Fracture. Ooh, this cover looks the creepiest. Trans-autistic teen who survives an attempted murder, only to be drawn into the generational struggle between the rural poor and those who exploit them. That one sounds good too. I need to
creepy.
I just find a new like author I need to keep an eye on, probably. Okay.
Yeah, I hope the dog.
Do I need to see if this book's on NetGalley? Okay. Well, thank you so much for picking a book. It's usually taking like over a year to circle back to people, but when you are back in rotation, I will let you know because you picked it this time. So thank you for coming. Thank you everyone for watching. And if you're watching it back, leave us a comment down below. You know, let us know your rating and then chat with us as we chatted through this. Yes. But okay, that's it. See you next month.
All right. Bye.
Bye.